Hi, thank you, Beatrice. I hope you can hear me well from there. I'm Alfred again. Hello to everyone. I'll be presenting Crisis 2, which is kind of the title of the roster of things that I will be showing today. Crisis 2, a Philippine delicacy, to speak about my life, my research, and collaborative practice, and how precarity becomes a key ingredient in it. So I'll show a bit of animation just for engagement. If you notice, I'm one of the few, if not the only virtual speaker today. And right off the bat, that should tell you I'm someplace else, still doing Zoom calls while many countries have already opened up. I've been live streaming via my mobile phone as part of my practice since 2019, where I had the privilege to study in Europe. This show distance as an inevitable factor in how my work evolved. My work is rooted digitally, you can see, and is concerned with how we digest and consume complexity from the positions and spaces that I occupy as a Filipino, all while doing time and simultaneity. I know it's kind of a mouthful. It's a bit, yeah. So here's my question. Not really, but someone said it. Is it possible to be othered across time? Said Don Chan in 2016. And just to give you a sense of the live streaming aspect of my work, why do I live stream? Because in it, real time becomes a container for simultaneity. Many things happening at the same time, probably today with the program. What I'll be showing you now is how and it's a show that happened across two sites live between London, where I asked one of my friends, collaborator, and art to live stream her motorcycle trip from her home to meet with a friend. Not only can the modes of transportation be quite different, as the motorcycle service she hired is prevalent in Asia because small vehicles make it faster through traffic. I know that your bicycles there are small, different conversation. But the glitches and lags in the stream um, also demonstrate the difficulties in communication, mobility, queerness between people everywhere, and the spaces that we occupy. So you can see we're trying to call here from the London gallery and while we talk to Isola in Manila. So a lot of connection somehow. Today, while I speak to you with many others to have our stories heard, imperative that I sustain your interest for the attention economy. However, we're dealing with complex issues that I think to condense can be tantamount to eating fast food instead of healthy food, or eating healthy food, but not knowing the ethical implications of how that was produced. This project you're seeing right now, uh, more research-based, I suppose, is called the Bawang Directory. While Bawang is an acronym for the Tagalog or Filipino, and apparently Bahasa word for garlic. It's an Excel file. The entire project is an Excel file of public Facebook pages about alternative healing, so supernatural practices, and folk belief being exchanged online and quite overlooked, perhaps because of their rudimentary design or unproven medical claims. In just a bit of context, that's the project, but a bit of context. In a world of disease and disinformation, the World Health Organization apparently had to put up a mythbuster page telling people that despite the circulating posts in some parts of Asia that say garlic can alleviate COVID, it doesn't. But what these pages really tell us is how information becomes political, that the lack of it pushes people to create their own information with their own syntax and imagine a world where garlic could substitute for the vaccine. Because around that time, people have anxiety whether or not they'll get the vaccine or what kind of brand they will get because there's a lot of precarity. The Bawang Directory itself is a product of a collective called the Artists for Digital Rights Network, who gave us participants in a workshop on how this information affected our 2016 elections. And now, actually, our elections were kind of like the uh, prototype for fake news in some ways. An overwhelming consensus is how much more disinformation architects understood the concerns and language of our country's class divide. This page you're seeing now is the extended version of the project in collaboration with Indonesia-based artist collective Hopla, where we connected with the materials they contributed as well as the earlier data set. So it was great actually to gather, albeit online, like we're doing now, with everyone, the contributors in the Bawang directory, because we ended up learning about how these pages are deeply rooted in each of our country's major religions, Christianity and Islam, respectively, for Philippines and Indonesia, and how the capacity of complexity is crucial to criticality and self-determination. This is the live stream that I did via Zoom because mobile phone, I'm not traveling much recently, but yeah, so this is a recent incarnation of the project as an installation within my university. To live stream, to research, to cook is to be collaborative, and that's kind of the third aspect of what I'm going to talk about. And my work relies on network support. Often this sort of collectivity is something we see in current artistic practices, but maybe what gets past us sometimes is that is the limitations and difficulties of solidarity. The project you're seeing now is called Omen, the Garden as Chronicle and Strategy of Resistance. When I'm asked to speak of this work, I always inquire about time. I either have 2 seconds or 2 hours to explain it, but we'll meet half. In 2 seconds, it is a garden, it is a classroom, and it is a protest. But a little bit more for that. Just like in Harurot and the Bawang Directory, Omehen is rooted in a struggle for self-determination. In what ways can we communicate to the world who we are without presenting ourselves for idle consumption? Can the rest of the world enjoy what we have to offer, but also stomach our struggles and our cultural baggage, like, I don't know, probably the lags that's happening now. Just a trigger warning, my two co-teachers and I initiated this project in collaboration with the Lumad Bakwit schools. The Lumads are in southern Philippines who, as refugees, so if you notice, Lumad Bakwit, a modification of the word evacuate. They went to the capital where we are to continue studying because their families, their lands, and their lives are being taken away from them in a series of extrajudicial killings, land grabbing, and many other injustices. While they tried to study someplace safer, they were also at the forefront of many protests, you can see, that we joined, also advocating for their safety and self-determination. Here you can see the Lumad Bakwit students using vegetables as a way of protesting in their own social media platforms. First, about the shutting down of a major broadcast station, so silencing, and then about the terror bill that can and has allowed the government as dissenters by red tagging them. So that term means that when you're red tagged, you get associated with the armed communist groups. Omehen comes into this offering land with our own university to allow students to study agriculture in the holistic way they used to do in their own regions and provinces. One of its most memorable instances for me was when the Lumad Bakwit students graciously conducted one of their land rituals called Panubad Tubad, where they asked supernatural entities to guide them in this process, allow us to use our meager 5 by 5 meter land. Now is a product of here. What you're seeing now is a product of the Panubad Tubad, where the blood of a native chicken enchants the tools we will use so that they hurt us when we garden. So there's kind of that inanimate collaboration. I was lucky enough to live stream this process for a short period of time and still participate in their joy and instinct of engaging with land that they have been deprived for years. So here is the screenshots of the live stream. It's kind of ephemeral because you didn't want to keep the recording. When you plant or peel an orange or dispose of chicken bones, there's labor in eating at all stages. It wasn't easy to sustain this project because of fear of harassment, burnout, lack of funds, delays in communication, and just gaining trust. So all the problems you could think of, solidarity. Recently, even there was even an unjust arrest here in Tarlac of more than 90 artists and farmers. So it's super tough. But after starting it in 2019, the garden transformed into a podcast of conversations. We had to take it online. That the independent curators international are now touring. In Anchor FM and on Spotify, we demand that people listen to us and the Lumad Bakwit students as we talk about issues like food security, our access to education, and many others. So if you can see the tracks here on this side, you can see the tracks. So that the latest one is I talked to Michael, a Lumad Bakwit student who painted his friend, and in such a style that shows their affinity to the Pantaron mountain range in the southern Philippines. Listening is like labor, like what you're doing now, just like eating, but without the instant gratification of seeing much. Throughout its run, Omehen became part of another initiative called Tanggulan 2021, preparing a digital exhibition hosted by the concerned artists of the Philippines and several environmental groups that sought to bring climate activism closer to the U.S. It's a little gamified, and so like more than 3 dozens of contributed to this in partnership with different environmental groups. So it's like a painting that you can see here. Some are documents, or some are like law, like materials that my students sometimes that make it more digestible for them to look at climate advocacies. And lastly, you could see our work in the middle there, or at the back actually. So a lot of problems like land, water, air, urban. So yeah. Throughout its across these 3 projects, Harurot, the Bawang Directory, and Omehen, and my different modes of creation, live streaming, research, and collaboration, I attempt to both facilitate understanding but defy consumption. The many contradicting, complicated, and compromised elements of my practice bring to mind something I saw when I went back to the Philippines. Once again, it was humid, and transportation will drain the life of you. Governments will literally kill you, and institutions are more or less very difficult to navigate without even factoring yet one's own individual struggles. When I saw this billboard on a very, very large shopping mall with a glitchy ad for beer, I am reminded that we are truly that everyone is being afraid of being in. You could watch us on streams, in your social media feed, or even in world news as some form of horror genre or sci-fi mashup. But really, we're just othered in time, ready for everyone else to partake in our crisis too. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned a lot from that, despite some of the lags that